What's up, everyone? Jacob Roach back here from the Killing Joke Studios and Mixing with Metal. Thanks for tuning in again today, guys. I just checked the channel and I realized we hit 200 subscribers, so that is absolutely amazing. Thank you guys so much for subscribing to the channel, sharing the videos, everything. That's awesome. So we are going to be doing the 200 subscriber special where I'm answering you guys' questions. But before we can do that, I need your guys' questions. So leave questions below on this video or any video, or send me them on Facebook or here on YouTube. It really doesn't matter. Just try and get the questions to me in some way, shape, or form so I can answer them. And I'll get on live and I'll answer the questions I already have and then answer any more questions that roll in from that. So once again, thanks so much, guys. Make sure you leave those questions below. But let's jump into our video today, which is how to EQ a kick drum. Now, kick drum EQing is one of those things that when you're first starting out, you kind of learn how to do it and it's fine and it works. And I know it's been a thing and it's kind of easy to get there, but over time it kind of develops and it becomes more of a craft as you continue on. And so I've noticed in my productions, I've had to really hone in the craft of EQing a kick drum and not just go, okay, here's a bunch of lows, here's a bunch of top, cut out all the mids, which is what I would do before. And that's what you hear a lot with productions nowadays, is that you hear a lot of top, a lot of lows, and a lot of mids cut out. And that's kind of what you're supposed to do, but you're supposed to do it in a way that mends the kick drum with the rest of the drum kit. And I noticed that in my productions, the kick drum would stick out kind of like a sore thumb in the context of everything else. And so what I'm going to do today is show you my process for kind of going through and EQing a kick drum so that it kind of melds with it. And instead of showing you specific things I'm doing, I'm just going to kind of give you my overall process. So let's start from the top. I'm thinking of a kick drum in really three aspects. I'm thinking first in the sub region. I'm thinking second in the thud area. So that's that low end area that's not really sub, but is giving some low end punch to the drum. And now I'm thinking of the click, okay? And the click doesn't necessarily mean super high. I'm just meaning what is cutting through the mix, but doesn't sound too separated from everything else, okay? So let's start at the top. The first thing, and I have 3 EQs here, and I'm going to go through each of them. The first thing is this REQ4, okay? And I'm treating the sub region, okay? So let me unbypass this, and I'll go through each of these moves one by one. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask, okay, what don't I need? All right. And really, I don't need anything below 30 hertz on any of my tracks. I've always mixed like this. I clean up even, maybe even up to 35, 40 hertz sometimes on a master bus to get rid of low end energy. I may not hear it. I don't have a sub. I went to check my subs. I check on headphones, but the limiter is going to see it. Okay. So all this low-end crap, I really don't need, especially later on when I hit my final limiter. I don't want 30 hertz on a kick drum to be slamming my limiter every single time. And the more and more you let things below that region build up, your limiter is going to see all of that, even if you don't hear it, and it's going to make your mix sound bad when you go to mastering. So the first thing I'm doing is high passing and cutting out crap. Okay, that's good. All right, so the next thing I'm doing is I high pass to the region that I think is kind of where I'm safe without affecting the sub of the kick drum too much. And then I boost immediately above that. So those are the first 2 moves I make, all right? And then after that, to accentuate that boost even more, instead of boosting this up even higher, I'm going to cut immediately after that, okay? That brings the boost down a little bit, and it cuts immediately after that. And essentially what you're doing is accentuating that boost, okay? So this is just a general EQing tip. If you want to accentuate a boost more, but you really don't want to push the boost any higher, cut around it, and that will effectively make the boost more pronounced without it being like 12 dB or whatever thing that you're doing. Now, if 12 dB is what you need to do, then do your thing, but you know what I'm saying. So let me bypass this and I'll bring it in, and really you're going to need to have either a sub or monitors to even hear what's going on here. Cool. So you can hear what's going on there if you have headphones or if you have a sub. You can hear how I'm boosting that sub region. Let me take this cut out and show you just how much of a difference that's making. All right, so that's huge. It goes from this kind of obtuse, really kind of flubby low end to tight and concentrated sub region, isolating that boost away from everything else. Okay, so that's the sub. Let's move on. So these next two EQs, I have a hammer EQ and then I have REQ6. And these two EQs are really working in conjunction with each other to get my thud and my click together. So I'm not really, I use a sub EQ separately to kind of separate the process away from each other, but the next two I kind of group together. So this hammer EQ, just let's start out at this low band here. This is where I'm finding my thud. So around 100 hertz in that area is where I'm really kind of finding that low end kind of punch of the kick drum, and I'm boosting that up. And the reason I'm doing this on the hammer EQ and not on the Renaissance EQ is because this area can be kind of dangerous when you're boosting a lot. You can take your kick drum and really make it kind of sound, the low end sound not tight. And that's not what we want in metal. We want really tight low end on our kick drum. And so the reason I'm using this hammer EQ is because you can go crazy with this thing and it just almost always sounds good. And so that's why I chose to use that to boost this low end so that I'm not accentuating things I don't want to accentuate. So that's the first thing I'm doing. Okay. The next thing I'm doing is I'm cutting a lot of mid-range. Again, these are similar concepts where you're boosting lows, boosting top, and cutting mid-range, but I'm doing it in a way that that makes sense and not just doing it for the sake of doing it. Okay. So I'm cutting around 500 here. All right. And that's typically, we're going to find some nasty stuff here. I'll boost it up and show you just what's going on with that. So it's really nasty. Definitely don't want that sound in our kick drum. So I'm just scooping that out. All right. And then above that, I'm boosting here at 10K. Now, normally, and this is what I'm talking about with sticking out like a sore thumb, normally I would boost at like 7.5, 8K, somewhere up there, not as high as 10K, because you want that metal click sound, and that'll get that for you. So let me show you what the 7.5 sounds like. And then the 10. All right, and it's a subtle difference, but what I'm doing here is instead of boosting around like, 6 to 8 where you would normally boost a click of a kick drum, I'm boosting above that because I want that metal click, but I found when I boost around there, it just sticks out and I really don't like how it sounds. And I know there's a lot of guys who do it up there and their productions sound great, but for me, it just doesn't work and I just don't prefer it. It just, like I said, it for some reason, it always sticks out of the mix. So I want that click of the kick drum, but I want it to be more perceived than actually stick out. And so that's why I'm boosting at 10K instead of boosting at 7.5. And again, with this hammer EQ, I'm boosting the top end here because I know I can get away with a lot without it being too overbearing. So let me bypass this and I'll bring it back in. All right, cool. So now we have what sounds like a metal kick drum. And so normally what I would do is I would stop there, okay? And I would accept that as a kick drum sound, and it would be a little not ideal, okay? But now I took it a step further, and I'm using this REQ6, okay? And what I'm doing here is I'm finding some other frequencies lower down that will cut through the mix, and I'm boosting those. So this is giving me that click, I guess, perceived click sound without it being that super top end gross nastiness. So let me just bring this in and I'll show you what I'm doing. And I already know what's going on. You're going to be like, oh man, Jake, that EQ, it ruined the kick drum sound. It's not working now. And just don't use that EQ. And I'll show you in the context of the drums later why this EQ works. But first, let me run through it. So I'm finding something that's high, but not like super duper high. So maybe in the high mid area, and I'm boosting that, okay? I'm finding some region where the kick drum can live and it can cut through the mix without being that really kind of ice picky top end, okay? And I'm boosting that, and then I'm cutting immediately after. Again, accentuating that boost a little bit more, and I'm getting rid of some 5K-ish, which is just always gross on kick drums for some reason. Here, let me take this out, and then I'll boost this up and show you why it's nasty. That is what I'm talking about. That is disgusting, and it always cuts through a mix in just the grossest way. So that's what this EQ is doing. Now let me show you in the context of the rest of the drums just as much as doing. And I just unbypassed my compression and then a virtual channel strip here, or console emulation, whatever. And let me go ahead and just show you in the context of the drums what this EQ, this specific EQ is doing, to show you why it makes everything kind of meld together more. So I'll bypass and then I'll bring it in. You know what? Even better, let me just show you in the context of the entire mix, because I think that's where you're really going to hear it. Okay, do you hear how it's blending with the bass and the guitars in a much more pleasant way? Let me solo this and the guitars and the bass, and you can really hear how it's just blending together with those two instruments instead of being separated from them. Okay, and that's why I use that final EQ, is because this is really melding that kick drum and making it one with the bass and the guitars, okay? And so, yeah, on its own, you might sound like you're ruining the kick drum, and at first you're like, oh my God, this kick drum sounds great, and then throw this other EQ on, and it doesn't work. And this brings up a really important point about mixing. Yes, you need to be able to mix in solo. That's totally a thing. You need to be able to hear a kick drum and know how to make it sound good by itself. But more importantly, you need to be thinking about the entire mix. Okay, so check it later on. Check it like this and say, okay, well, it's just not melding. How can I get it to meld? And that's how I did this, is to blend this kick drum in. I found that right around this area, boosting that kind of up and having it live there really kind of makes the kick drum, the bass, and the guitar sound like one. Okay, and that's really important. Not to mention, for some reason before, the kick drum just didn't sound mean, if that makes sense. It doesn't sound like, mean, like a metal kick drum. It just sounded like clicky kick drum, clicking low end, and that's it. And that boost really makes it kind of sound mean. So one more time, I'm going to bypass all of this EQ in the context of the entire mix, and I'm going to bring it all back in. All right, and yeah, that does a ton for a kick drum, obviously, but really that last EQ is super important in all this. So this is not the process everyone uses. I know it's not, but this is something that I think works. And if you think in terms of sub, thud, and click, and think of how it's working in context of everything else, I think you'll be just fine. Every kick drum's different. Every sample you're going to use is going to be different. So don't just throw a sample on there and call it a day. Really think in terms of how can I make this blend in with the rest of the track so that your kick drum doesn't stick out like a sore thumb. So I hope this is helpful to you guys. Maybe it's more than just how to EQ a kick drum. It's really just approaching the tone shaping of a kick drum overall, and really thinking about it contextually, which is achieved through EQ, but it's more of a contextual thing. So once again, guys, we are doing the 200 subscribers special, so go ahead and leave your questions below or leave them on another video or whatever. There should be some videos popping up on the screen. Make sure you click that center button to subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys next time.